Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades, and I am Gary something.
Yeah, you're Gary something.
And you're Josh something.
I'm Joshua something.
Yeah, that's good. You started off all right. I think that's as good as it's going to
Too
get.
much over?
No, I don't.
You can't
no.
remember your last name?
No,
Okay.
I'm in the witness protection program, Josh.
Protecting from yourself?
Yes.
Some people need to be
I
protected
know.
from themselves.
A lot of people need to be protected from me.
Oh, I get you.
Yeah, so that's why I do that. Go ahead, introduce our guest.
All
What's your
right,
job?
so tonight we have two guests. We have Randy and Al MacAurthur. Randy is the owner of Wildlife Sport Outfitter over on Candia Traffic Circle, and his brother Al is a member of the Wilson Hill Pistol Club and a firearms instructor.
You sure they're
Welcome.
And also employed by Wildlife Sport Outfitters.
Okay, well, he's employed by Wildlife as well.
You sure they're two different people or exactly the same person and they're just schizophrenic?
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah, let's not go there.
I guess they've been hit with that question before, the way they're avoiding it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a time or two.
So Randy, well, both of you. I've been a customer of Wildlife for, what are we, 2019? So
20.
almost 20 years now. I go there for my ammo. I go there for miscellaneous equipment. I've bought a couple of firearms for 22 Pistol League there.
Yep.
But that was
There's
long before.
There's a 22 pistol league there?
Well, I bought the pistol there
for
the
the
league
oh,
that
wow.
I was in years ago. But you're fairly new to the
3
store.
years.
Yeah.
3 years last month.
Oh, 3 years! Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's going
So
pretty well.
now, as a businessman, wouldn't you have rather Barack Obama win? Because he was like a really good salesman for gun manufacturers.
Yeah, but, I'm perfectly happy with who's in office right now.
So
Because we wouldn't have this discussion if Hillary had won.
no, we'd be hiding under the table and talking in secret at dark rooms.
That's it.
I know. It's pretty. It's amazing.
Yep.
So you're not just a gun store.
No.
You run the gambit.
Yeah,
right?
it's a multifaceted store. We do archery, fishing equipment. Fishing really is the biggest part of our store. That's what really
Yeah,
carries us.
that's what kind of hits you right
Oh,
in
really?
the face when you
Absolutely,
walk in. All
yeah.
the fishing,
Yep.
ice
Yep.
fishing.
So I owned another store before this one, and I thought long and hard about it because knowing if Trump had gotten into office, what was I going to do? I knew the sales were going to drop drastically,
Right.
which they have.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided, my real estate agent had called me and told me that Wildlife was going on the market, asked me if I was interested in possibly purchasing it. And it just escalated from there. So,
Well, I think it's a good business to be in because, regardless of who's in office, there's still hunting and fishing and
There is.
outdoor sports.
yeah,
So
and
that's,
we're battling with Fish and Game now because they want to impose some new laws and we're trying to work on getting that squared away.
What new laws are they trying to? What nefarious things are they trying to do to you?
So what they're doing is right now there's a 300-foot rule. You have to be 300 feet away from any dwelling.
For
Well,
shooting.
Yes,
Is it
for hunting.
dwelling
hunting
or structure?
structure.
Yeah.
So they're proposing a bill right now to make it 900 feet.
Yeah, that's not going. I think the governor will veto that.
I'm not sure
Yeah, that-
what he's going to do at this point.
That really
Because it makes so many areas unhuntable.
That's the problem.
right, and you really have to go way up north into some really scattered areas in order
Sure.
And besides that, if you're hunting, you've been hunting in the same place for years. You know your limits. You know where you should be. But 900 feet, that's 3 football fields.
That's it.
Right?
So
That's a
You
long
don't have a
ways.
line of sight to know that all the time.
Nope.
well, the big deal is, when's the last time somebody got hurt hunting because somebody was too close to a house in New Hampshire?
That I couldn't tell you.
I don't
know
remember
what-
one.
Yeah.
I remember there was a hunting accident, but I think it was 2 guys out in the middle of the woods, and one guy mistook the other person for a deer or something and shot or didn't.
Just like the old owner.
And there's
He
been
was
instances
killed.
where pellets have hit buildings, but
Yeah, but there's
I
no-
don't recall any major damage or major fatalities
Could-
related
Not-
to the 300-foot rule.
Not that I've heard. in a
Because the
long-
thing
very
is,
long
when you
time.
get a bill as a legislator, when I get a bill in my committee, one of the primary criterias is to decide whether or not I'm going to vote for this is there a problem that it's solving, and is it necessary?
Right.
And if there isn't any problem, and there doesn't seem to be, I haven't heard of any, so it's not solving any problem, it's just making some liberal feel warm and fuzzy about, is all I can tell.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Adding
Wow.
more rules.
Just adding
Well,
more rules.
yep.
Huh.
Well, we'll have our friend Gary keep an eye on that.
I will.
Well, of course you will.
I can't remember my last name. You want me to keep track of that?
We'll remind you on
All
voting
right. All right.
day,
Thank you.
just like we have to remind you this morning.
Yes. Yeah. So today at the legislature, a couple of big bills, one of which is completely irrelevant to this conversation, was the liberals are so
I'm
it's
forgetting
mad.
it too, but I know what you're talking
It's
about.
no, I know. I don't. I remember it. It's so insane. They wanted to rename Columbus
Oh,
Day
yes.
Native American Day or something. Indigenous Peoples Day. It's like they want to, and I got to tell you the truth. A lot of it is they're trying to eliminate history. They're trying to destroy and corrupt history so they can remake history
Yep.
to convince our children that, I'll tell you the story. So I was on Fish and Game for a bunch of years, on Fish and Game Committee. First term, there was a gentleman came in from, I think he was from Canada, and he was, I believe what he said, he was a member of the Mohawk Indians, okay? And most people come up and testify before our committees, and they sit there like this, sit upright, and talk to the committee. He did not. He came up and he leaned back like this and talking to the committee, right? Super arrogant. He says, my people controlled a territory from the Gulf of Mexico to the Hudson Bay, from the Mississippi River to the Atlantic Ocean, a landmass greater than that than the Roman Empire. I didn't ask the question because I thought the whole bill was going to go down the drain anyway, so it was no point in like badgering them. But in my head, I'm going, what is the difference between the Mohawk Indians attacking a tribe, killing everybody and taking over their land, and a white settler killing everybody and taking over their land? It's the same thing. It's just a
Absolutely.
different colored people doing it.
Sure.
It's human nature, and it's. I don't think it's right. I mean, there should have been ways to work around this.
Right.
But what does it matter what color person killed you?
And that's definitely what's taking place is to reshape history to a particular narrative, and in that case, that's one of those things I've always said that that they don't want to admit, right? We want to gloss over the fact that the tribes were already within themselves and between tribes hunting each other down and taking over land. But that's a part of history we don't want to acknowledge.
No, but another part of history, that whole, it was a little bit off topic, but that's okay. So another part of that history is there's two different settlements. There was Jamestown, and then there was the Pilgrims. Jamestown was pretty did some crappy crap stuff. The Pilgrims actually had a 50-year treaty with the Indians. It lasted 50 years, but the two cultures were clashing, and eventually the Indians broke that treaty. And they did some immensely horrific, they didn't just kill people. I'm not going to say it because there might be kids watching, but the things that the Indians did to the Pilgrims was so horrific that, rewriting that history to make it look like the Pilgrims were completely the bad guys. I'm sure they had their part in the argument, but they're just rewriting history to make it sound good.
To kind of bring that to the future,
Yes.
that particular conflict, where
Was that King? What war?
Where-
King
where
Henry's War or
Pilgrims were under attack occasionally by natives,
Yeah.
is what brought forth the rule that they had in place that the head of each household would bring his hunting rifle to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
So having your gun in church is a tradition that goes back 400
Oh, now
years.
I don't feel so out of place every Sunday.
That
So,
relates to something that happened recently, I think.
oh, does it?
I think it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
In case, tell them what that is because people might not have all heard it because the news
Okay.
media is not covering it that well.
So there was a church shooting in Texas. Was it after the New Year?
Yeah, I think
So many things have happened in the last 5 days that I'm.
It is wicked tough to keep
And
up.
and the shooting was stopped by one armed
Church member.
congregate shot the shooter and stopped the mass shooting. He did bring a shotgun and a handgun and was ready to cause some damage. But if you watch the video, there were 5 congregants that stood up and unholstered their pistols. So it was a well-protected church.
Yeah.
But the news goes away quickly, and of course, other major things have happened recently.
Well, it goes away quickly because they don't want to cover it because it
Well,
doesn't
they
fit the
wanna-
narrative.
Right. They want to crucify the gentleman that shot the mass shooter.
Yeah. What is there was one. It was a fake headline. It was something. Mentally ill man shot in Texas church.
Right. Right. That was the headline.
Crazy.
That was one of somebody mocking the regular
CNN.
news media.
So,
Anyway, so today we had House Bill 687. That was the big one. House Bill 687 is red flag law. And what that means, a red flag law means I get suspicious of Josh, which everybody should be. And I call the local police and say, Josh has been doing some weird stuff over at his house, and I really think you should go in there and check it out because I'm really scared. I'm really scared of Josh.
chicken and waffles is not weird.
Wow, it is weird. It is weird, unless it's got like maple syrup on everything. Anyway, so what do? Once I've called the police to report Josh for his insanity, what do?
They show up knocking on my door, and they violate my Fourth Amendment rights.
Well, first off,
my
they have to
Second
go.
Amendment rights.
They have to go and petition the court.
But they have an extreme clause
Right.
that allows them to not do that. Right. So but yes, you're absolutely right. The court has to be petitioned. But
But that can be a phone call.
right.
To a nice liberal judge that's okay. We're going to run this right through.
Cops know what judges they can get what answer
Right.
from.
Yep.
So a cop calls the judge, says, "Hey, neighbor just called us about Josh." Then what happens?
Then they go and pull a no-knock. Hopefully they knock and ask to come in. They may not. If they think you're an extreme risk, if they think you may be armed, they may come in and do a no-knock raid. Which I hope is something we never see here in this state.
Yeah.
Because
so that's
I don't see any scenario where this ends well.
so where that violates the Fourth Amendment. The
What-
Second Amendment.
Well, tell them what the amendments mean. Just saying
So
it
the
violates the Fourth Amendment doesn't necessarily mean anything to some people.
well, obviously, the Second Amendment is your right to keep and bear arms. The Fourth Amendment is search and seizure.
Correct.
So that's come in and grab whatever they want, and then the Sixth Amendment is
Innocent until proven guilty, isn't it?
exactly. So
Yes.
So with no due process, they can come in and take your property, and then you have to prove that you're innocent. So it's, like I said,
Yeah.
nothing good's gonna come out of this.
Yeah, so so the problem with bills like this is on the surface they seem reasonable, and that's why you have people and you got to keep track of the money. So Bloomberg and other people are paying for these bills to be introduced all around the country. I don't know if Debbie Alschlitzer from the Seacoast gets money from him directly, but I believe probably.
Yeah.
And why do they do it? Because to normal people, because the way they sell it, this is a sales job. Look, you have a person that's really, really unstable. A family member knows they're unstable, and they call the police because they can't do anything about it. They call the police and they report Josh. I don't know why they're always reporting Josh, but they report Josh, and it sounds legit. Like somehow this is going to prevent Josh. One of the big arguments they give you is it will prevent Josh from committing suicide. Okay, so let's just use that argument for a second. So Josh is, let's presume that they're correct, and Josh is very, very unstable. He's super unstable. Maybe he's taking medication for his instability. The cops break into his house, search his house, go through everything, rip things apart, take whatever gun they can find, and walk away.
Yep.
So now Josh, if their allegation is true, is super unstable, and they're worried about him going to take his own life, and you just left him with rope, knives, medicine, about a dozen different ways to take his own life.
and that's one of the keys is that they're focusing on one item.
Yep.
And they're not actually focusing on the problem at hand, right? In that case, the problem is a mental health issue, it's a suicide issue, and they're not focused on that. They're only focused on the one item.
Let me ask you this. Being a firearms dealer, where does that put me? I have a hostile customer that leaves. He's all bent out of shape, which hopefully that never happens. But picks up the phone, calls the cops. What happens then?
That doesn't just take away your rights. It destroys your business.
Right.
It puts your employees out of work.
Yep.
It destroys you financially. It's not. It has no purpose.
No.
Right. Because they're hyper focused on the firearm, and they're not focused on the problem.
Yeah, and that's any of us as dealers, that puts a big target on our back.
Yeah, that's exactly what they would do too.
Mhm.
So for people who don't, because the thing is, what you might hear in the media are rational reasons why these bills are good. What you might not understand is that there are fanatics that are behind this. We had them up in the gallery today. They all had red shirts. The fanatics,
Moms demand action.
huh?
The moms demand action.
Yeah. So moms demand actions. They're all up in the gallery and they're screaming and stuff. Keep in mind when you see that group of people on the news media, because the news media will zoom in and show all these moms that demand action.
Yep.
They're not from New Hampshire.
No, when they're getting paid to be here.
Yeah. It's a scam. And what they would do if we do get this in is exactly what you said. They would say, okay, now we've got the law and things. All we have to do is figure out which police forces are cooperative or are anti-gun, or what cops are, and what judges we can use, because they can find that information out. They have connections.
Sure.
And now they go and they raid your store and they say you're unstable, and it takes you now. See, the due process thing is very, very important right now. For a citizen of the United States, They're not supposed to be able to take your property without due process.
Right.
They have to take you to court, and then they prove you're guilty, and then they take your stuff.
And you have to have a say in it.
Yes, you have, but in this
You have
case,
to be able to defend yourself.
right, in this case, you can't defend
There
yourself
is no defense.
because they take it.
Yep.
Now you've got to prove that you're not insane.
Right.
So now you got to find a psychiatrist or
That
psychologist.
process is not laid out in the law, is it? It's not laid out in the text of the
No,
bill.
and there's no.
What is that process to get back and prove your innocence? To prove that you should not have been subject to this in the first place.
Right. I mean, I think anybody worth their salt, if they did it against me, they could take dozens of posts that I posted on Facebook and convince a psychiatrist that I'm not stable.
Sure.
And that was my next point, was as soon as the law's in place, now they can go back and they say, Randy, how long have you been on social media? Let's scroll back 5 years.
Yeah.
And if you said anything inflammatory or anything like that,
Yeah.
right? What was it that Mark Twain said? He says, I've never wished a man dead, but I've read many of obituaries with great pleasure, right? You say something as simple as that after the
Sure.
killing of Soleimani, right?
Well,
Oh, he's an
everybody
extremist and he owns guns, right?
Right.
Yeah,
So,
everybody takes everything out of context nowadays anyway.
And
So,
they can take anything you say out of context,
absolutely.
and they can go back as far in history as they want,
Sure.
and they'll do that. They will somebody will do it. It will happen. They will systematically start with firearms dealers. They'll start with their neighbors. They'll do exactly what you said, Gary. They'll find the right police officers, the right judges, and they will start systematically coming after everyone.
All you have to do to believe to understand how true that is look every time Trump tries to do something with a border to try to secure the border. What do? They go to a judge in a district that they know is friendly to their cause, and that's where they file suit, because the probability of being successful at holding up this, which is an insane proposition that actually works. Anyway, but that's what they'll do. They'll judge shop and they'll cop shop, and they'll just start attacking people. And the problem is, okay, so they take my guns. Now, unless I'm an idiot, I got to figure out how to hire a lawyer, because I'm not going into court by myself, because I don't get it. I don't even know why they think I'm nuts.
Yep.
So, of course, a crazy person wouldn't think they're nuts. Anyway, so you hire a lawyer. Well, how am I going to get money for a lawyer? So now I got to come up with $10,000 to fight to get my rights back that I should have never lost to begin with. I have to find a psychiatrist or doctor who will testify or at least sign something that says I'm not crazy. And now look at the doctor. What position are you putting in this doctor or psychiatrist? If he signs that paper and I was crazy and I go out and shoot somebody, is he liable? What's it going to do to his insurance?
In this
How
day and age,
likely?
you never know.
How likely is a doctor going to? How hard is it going to be to find a doctor that will sign a paper that say yes, this person is sane enough to own firearms? Which is
You won't ever find that person.
right.
As it is today, we have a mental health issue across the nation, but as it is today, you get children and adults, folks on the spectrum, folks not on the spectrum, who need help.
Yes.
They need diagnoses. But there are no doctors out there who want to put their license on the line to give a definitive diagnosis, because no one wants to be responsible for that diagnosis if it's wrong.
Correct.
So doctors will stall for years.
Right.
And to take that mentality and push it into the gun control debate, it's a lost cause.
Yeah. But that's really what red flag laws are all about, is to take guns away. If they were actually to try to prevent violence, because if somebody's nuts, there's all kinds of ways they can kill people. In other words, if you really think somebody's unstable and is going to harm other people, it'd be safer just to take his license away,
Sure.
driver's license, okay? Because somebody who's unstable can rent the U-Haul, which we've seen happen.
Mm-hmm.
There's all
Saw that
kinds
in
of things.
California.
Yeah. So The thing to do if somebody's that unstable would be involuntary admission to a hospital for observation,
Or just send them to California.
or send them to California. But that would be the correct thing to do, because now you're taking away from any means by which they can harm themselves or others,
Sure.
and evaluating them and try to find out what's going on. Do they need help? Maybe it's a veteran that's got post-traumatic stress and they really do need help. Or maybe it's just an angry ex that is trying to get back at you.
Right.
And that was the other problem we heard about today on the House floor is, okay, so the angry ex calls up and say, Gary Hopper's a danger. He said some threatening things when I was over there picking up my kids today, blah, blah, blah. And the cops picked me up. They talked to the children. The children said, no, he didn't say anything. Okay? So the cops research it and find out, if they're good cops, they're going to research and find out nothing actually happened.
Right.
I have a recording of what happened. Okay? You know what doesn't happen? Is that woman isn't put in jail for perjury or for lying or false accusations. That's what doesn't happen.
Right.
So
Is that outlined in the bill?
it
What happens if
they-
someone falsely makes an accusation?
it would be a false report or perjury, but it's not prosecuted, so it doesn't make any difference.
Yep.
So in other words, you can have a law about perjury, but if you look at the family courts today, they're full of people who perjure themselves all the time. And judges know it, and nobody's ever prosecuted for it, nobody's ever held accountable, so it will continue.
That's the narrative of the country now. Nobody's held accountable for anything anymore.
Right.
It's pretty tiring.
Yeah.
To see, even our House members, and these people are not being held accountable for anything. So we're living in almost a lawless society now. And it's pretty disgusting.
It is.
How many pages are in that bill?
I don't know, I
No.
can look it up. No, I
Uh,
can't, I don't get Wi-Fi.
The reason why I ask is, has anybody read every part of that bill? Because you get people down in Washington. What was the famous saying? We have to pass it first before we find out
Yeah,
what's
there's
in
Nancy
it.
Pelosi, we
Yeah,
gotta pass it so we can
exactly.
see what's in it.
Yep.
I mean, there's got to be a lot of nonsense. Well, the bill in and of itself is nonsense. What's in it?
Right.
What's buried deep down inside? What's the trap door that if this thing passes, that's going to get all law-abiding citizens in trouble for this?
Well, without reading the text, I can tell you that the biggest trapdoor is the definition of what is an extreme risk is going to be so loosely defined that pretty much anyone can make a claim. So,
So to answer your question directly, what happens on bills like this is I did not read the bill. I know what it is, so I'm going to vote against it. So reading it is really almost to me irrelevant. But what typically happens on these bills is that went to criminal justice. So back a long time ago when John Burt was on the committee, the people on the committee read the bills. Okay? And they're the ones who do the first, basically filter it through to find out what's in it and what's not in it.
Right.
And they're the ones who bring it to the House floor. So the people that have actually, because I'll give you an example. Today, we voted on, I don't know, I can't even imagine, at least 50 to over the, today and tomorrow, I think we'll vote on about 100 bills. Nobody's read all of them. If they have, they're superhuman or something, or they just really love reading boring stuff. So what happens is that the committee, the members of the committee read the bills. I think most people do pretty thoroughly, and then it goes to the House floor where we voted on it today. And I'm sure most people didn't read it, but we know that we trust. You have people on the committee that you trust, like Daryl Abbas got up and spoke on it today, and I know he read through it. You know what I mean? So we don't read all the bills, but we have people on the committee that have read all the bill before it ever gets to us.
See.
But we read, typically what we'll read is, let's say a Democrat on the committee is in favor of it, and they write a report, and then somebody like Daryl, who's been on the show, he's a lawyer and is on the committee, he'll write a minority report, and we'll read those to try to get an idea of what's going on. And if we're really curious, we'll go back and we can read the bill. But you can read the bill. It's all this
Sure.
stuff is online.
Yep.
On New Hampshire General Court website, so you can read it yourself too. But
So we can debate these bills.
mhm.
We're not going to come to a conclusion until Sununu vetoes them.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, crap happens, right?
Yes.
So we need to be prepared. We need to be trained.
Train and train hard.
So Randy, you offer.
Oh,
you
that
offer
was
some training.
that was a good story about the one you brought up about the church shooting.
Yeah.
Wasn't the guy like highly trained,
He
right?
was highly trained, yes.
He was.
He was former law enforcement,
Former law enforcement.
and he was the head of. He owns a firearms training school,
Yes.
and he was the head of the church security team.
Ah.
But again, you saw, folks that probably took his class.
They were
as well.
members of his
They were-
security team.
They were kind of backing him up. But they were also members of the church. They were all
Right.
sitting down with their families.
Right.
So, you offer some training at the store.
Yes, we do. We offer basic pistol class all the way up through to advanced classes. And they
What's the difference? What is a basic? Explain? Because I don't know. I've never taken any classes. I just go out back to my house and miss stuff.
I can let Al explain that to you. He's way more in depth than I am as far as the training classes go.
The difference, a basic pistol class is basically an introduction class. It takes people with very little knowledge or no shooting knowledge at all. And we take them from the very beginnings of, this is a gun, this is what it does. We go into the parts of the gun, tell them how the gun, the functions of the gun as it pertains to what happens when you pull the trigger. What does the gun do? What does a revolver do? What does a semi-automatic do?
Okay.
We go through the parts of ammunition. The entire piece of ammunition is called cartridge. It is not a bullet like you hear on
I know.
TV. So we let them know that on a metallic cartridge there's 4 basic parts. Then we walk them right through from soup to nuts, and then we end the day on the range doing live fire exercises.
Now, if somebody's just learning, I know when I teach people at my house, I always start them off with 22s.
That has been when I first became an instructor, that was the philosophy at Wilson Hill, was to start them off with 22 caliber handguns. And I've continued that philosophy because there's other training organizations out there that start people off with 0 experience, and they'll put a 9mm in their hands. And there was one individual who happened to be the former president of Wilson Hill, went through one of those classes, went to see Randy. Randy sent her to me. And the rest is history. I mean, I was on the phone with her this past weekend. She lives in Florida now. And I was coaching her over the phone because she was asking me different things.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to see somebody who is going to give up shooting altogether to being as dedicated to the sport as she is.
Oh, she was going to give it up because the 9mm was just too much.
It was way more than what she could handle, and she figured that was all there was.
Oh,
And
gosh.
Then Randy, she found Randy, and Randy introduced her to me, and everything went
That
very
was
well
one-
after that.
One of the things that I am very adamant about is a person that comes into my store, they want to purchase a firearm. For the most part, you can tell right away the amount of knowledge that a person has. I've directed people to, I've given them a bunch of information in a short period of time. It's hard for them to absorb it all. So I try to break that down to where they have a better understanding, and they're not overwhelmed when they leave.
Right.
But what I like to do is I like to send them to an indoor range. They can try out different firearms and determine what fits them the best and what works for them. I would rather not sell somebody a firearm and know that they're going to have sending them to the range. I'm going to know that they're going to know what's comfortable for them and what works for them. Not for me to tell them, oh, you need this certain gun.
And a lot of people, new people, take that attitude. Hey, you know, I've seen all this stuff going on TV. I need to protect myself.
Sure.
What should I get?
Yeah.
Right? And you're standing at the counter with what could be dozens or hundreds of guns.
Correct.
And you can't tell somebody.
You can't.
It's like any other sport, right? If someone gets in and they're thrown into the deep end, there's a good chance that they're not going to like being in the deep end, and
Or
they'll
they
just
make-
quit
or-
completely.
Right.
They'll either
Right.
quit completely
or
or
they could get hurt.
they could
Right.
get hurt.
You know.
Right.
You know what? So I got an invention in my head that I haven't made, but
Uh-oh.
no, this is actually
One
legit.
of Gary's famous
No,
inventions.
this isn't that famous, nor is it. It actually is, I think, a really good idea. It's I usually have crazy inventions just for fun. This is not one of those. I think, as a gun shop, you should have a fake pistol, right, where you pull the trigger, and a spring-loaded weight comes back and hits the back of the gun. Okay, and it mimics 22, or it's a harder spring. It mimics a 9mm, because a lot of people are just scared of recoil. Right.
There's
That's-
guns that can do that.
It's absolutely true.
You can take, there's special adaptations you can put to a gun with a CO2 cartridge.
Oh, okay. So
where
somebody
it will
already
mimic
invented it.
recoil.
That's a good idea, though, because I think a lot of people, they watch, they want to buy a gun, and they've watched Dirty Harry, and Dirty Harry's. This is the most
The-
powerful handgun in the
The
world. and,
TV and movies have done so much to destroy the realities of gun ownership and gun usage.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that I and my other instructors, we work hard to try to dispel as many of those myths as we can. And it's not easy because they're just inundated with it from a young age all the way up to whatever age they're at when they come to see me. So they've had a big head start with the media. And now I have to try to steer them in a
It's a
different
hard thing to
direction.
do. I have the same problem with just folks in my family. Well, maybe they have the problem with me, right? So I grew up in a
Yeah, I
military
think that's
family.
it.
My father was part of a security team on the Navy base, and so I grew up around firearms, and I grew up learning the proper way to handle things. And so when I watch a movie, I just shake my head, or I say, "No, that's complete crap. You don't. No trained professional would carry a firearm."
Well, we have a
that
very
way."
similar background.
Yeah.
Our father was, an expert in the military, and that's where we got our early training from.
Yep.
And-
And it's a head shaker when you see folks
It
who
is.
don't know what they're doing.
And he really, that was 100%. You either handled the firearm with respect or you didn't shoot.
Yep.
That was the bottom line.
That's one thing that I do, and I tell everybody. I do it very rarely. That I'll bring a family member or a very close friend who's never fired a firearm. I'll bring them to the range, and I will prep them on the drive to the range. I'll tell them, I am going to be a real prick. If I see your finger where it shouldn't be, I'm going to yell at you. And I have. I've yelled at my wife. I've yelled at my ex-wife.
This sounds like an
multiple reasons,
excuse
but-
just to yell at
Just
your
to yell.
wife.
But you have to be very
No,
strict
it's
on
true.
that, and for folks who haven't.
And what's the first thing you see, most people that come into the gun store, what do you see when they grab a firearm?
Right on the trigger.
Trigger
Trigger.
goes right
Yep.
inside that
And
gun.
it's right on the trigger.
Or even worse is the finger goes right on the trigger, and the muzzle's pointed at somebody.
Right,
Or they don't even check the gun to make sure it's not loaded.
right.
That was the first thing my father taught us, was as soon as the gun is handed to you, whether it's been checked or not by
Right.
somebody else, you make sure that gun is not loaded.
So I grew up. My dad was a drill instructor and as a jarhead, drill instructor, and the whole thing was muzzle control, always in a safe direction.
Yes.
And so I always have, if I have a rifle, I got it up like this, okay, pointed up. Well, I went to one of these machine gun shoots. I forget where it was. It was I think it was a legislative thing. The guy got really mad at me because every time I got done shooting, I held the gun like this. No, downrange.
Down.
I could not get used because when you have a jarhead dad, you learn exactly what to do every single time,
But you
no matter
also-
what.
You also got to remember what goes up must come down.
Right, I get that.
Yeah.
I understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And I
just
understood.
trying to break the habit.
But the habit was,
Yeah, breaking.
as soon as you're not shooting, that gun goes in a safe direction.
Well,
So
it's almost no different than trying to train a brand new shooter not to put their finger on the trigger.
yeah,
It has to be a constant reminder every time they pick the gun up. They have to be reminded. Keep your finger off the trigger. Keep the muzzle down range. They do whatever number of shots I want them to do. When the gun goes back down, everything's clear.
yeah,
Now we're going to do the next drill. When they pick the gun up, you reinforce that. Finger off the trigger, muzzle down range. You keep going over and over and over. It eventually will stick. Because the human hand is really cool. When it grabs onto something, it uses all four fingers and the thumb
yeah.
to grip everything. Well, gun manufacturers made this great little tool where the fingers got no place to go but to the trigger. So we have to actually train yourself to keep the finger up on the frame and off the trigger.
Right.
And it's not normal for people. So
Right.
it takes some time to get them acclimated to keeping their finger off the trigger.
Yeah.
So backing up a little bit on topic,
Wait, we're staying on
That's-
this topic actually
that's-
pretty good for more than 5 minutes.
that's
I think that's a show
you
record.
asked what the difference between basic pistol and the other.
Oh yeah,
classes
yeah,
are.
yeah, yeah.
We
yeah.
start
Now we move on to the others.
when we get into the other upper classes, we're looking at everything I do is defensive minded from the organization that I teach with. We move you from step to step, but keep the defensive mindset all the way through. So defensive handgun 1, we start introducing a little bit harder drills. We're not doing any holster work yet. And we start getting a little bit deeper into the legal things that we need to do. We do a complete review of the first course, not a complete, we do a review of the first course. Then we move on to do things just a little bit harder. Defensive handgun 2, we introduce holster work. So you're actually going to be wearing a holster, you're actually going to be drawing from a holster. So we take you from the beginning where you do none of that, and then we start introducing it. We have a 2-day concealed carry course that we work one whole day in the classroom, and we start getting really deep into stuff. Then the second day, it's all range work.
Right.
Do a safety check in the morning, do a review of the safety rules, and then we go on the range, spend most of the day on the range. And we're doing drawing, holstering, all of that stuff that people normally won't do on their own. And then we start getting the courses where you move, you're doing movement while you're shooting from behind cover, the difference between cover and concealment. We also we don't do this at Wilson Hill, I do it at another club.
I practice
do-
shooting from the fetal position.
Well, if it works for you. Some of the other stuff we do is, I'm just going to glaze right over that. We do defensive carbine and defensive shotgun. I'm hoping sometime later on this year, if I get 5 minutes to figure this out, I'm going to be doing some precision rifle classes.
That's not defensive.
No, it's not. It's more fun.
Yeah, it is more fun.
It's a lot more fun.
So something I'm curious about. Practicing shooting. When I was young, Dad was all about accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was actually kind of funny because we had, I don't know if you guys remember those old like leather slings,
Mhm.
and it's got the loop up front,
Yep.
and you would have us
Got a
put
whole
our
bunch of
hand
them.
through, come back around, then bring it up, then tighten that up, and he'd say, Can you feel your fingers? Yes. Oh, not tight
Ain't
enough.
tight enough.
Not tight enough, which isn't the way they do it anymore. But,
No.
but for defensive shooting, my understanding is that target shooting and defensive shooting are completely different.
They are, but unfortunately, we have to deal with what we have, and we're dealing with a static range. So we add.
What's a static range mean?
It's
Your target's not
just
moving.
target. Target's not moving,
Position target.
and
Yeah,
you,
okay.
you know, you don't have anything. You're not interacting with anything.
I thought there was like a lot of electricity and
Yeah,
sparks
no.
shooting.
No, we don't do that. No.
No.
That would be fun though.
You
That'd be
can
cool.
you can give a for instance for the simulator.
That's where I was going next. At Wildlife Sport, one of the things that we have up there is a interactive simulator.
Oh, you do?
Yes, we do. So we're using CERT pistols on a green screen with interactive scenarios. So I play a scenario, and you have to determine: should I shoot? Do I not shoot? If you wait too long, what happens? You get shot.
Is it like Men in Black?
So it's
No, it doesn't erase your memory afterwards.
I did do that simulation at the Pistol Club.
Yep.
About a year ago, and I can tell you that even though it's a fake gun, it's basically a laser tag type thing.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So when you pull the trigger, it gets registered. It will get your heart pumping.
It
You
does.
know it's not real, but
Well, I'm a
Your
Republican, so I
anticipation-
don't really have a
your
heart.
anticipation of what how this is going to play out, can really get to you. And sometimes it's a trick, right? Sometimes, you're sitting there, you're yelling at the screen because you need to get interactive with it, right?
Yeah.
And you're yelling at the screen, you're telling them to drop it, drop it, drop it, and you've got to make a decision. Is he swinging that arm around so that he can drop it, or is he swinging that arm around so that he can pull the trigger on you?
Right.
And you need to make a decision. And depending on what day of the week it is, Al may have loaded up the version where he pulls the trigger on you and you should have shot. And Al may load up this version where the guy drops it and you shouldn't have shot.
Do you get the little girl with the
So-
physics book?
No, I don't have that one.
That's wicked cool. That's so cool.
But that I thought when I did it was a very educational in that there was no real gun, there was no real kickback. I knew it was fake, my mind knew it was fake, but my nerves didn't.
That would be the next thing that I'm going to
Yeah.
buy are the actual simulated guns that are CO2 charged.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it'll have a laser in it. I have the lasers now. I've just got to buy the firearm.
I think that's
to do it.
a very important thing. I think everybody should give
And
that
you
a
can
try
also
and
use your own
understand it.
firearm.
Huh?
You can also use your own firearm.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But the problem with that is you have to rack the slide every time to reset your firing pin.
right, right,
'Cause
right.
once it hits the laser,
So
that's
is
it.
it? You get a CO2 cartridge go into your
No,
slide, or-
into a simulated gun. They're
Oh.
more or less airsoft guns.
But you said you can use your own firearm.
You can use your own firearm. There's a cartridge. I've got 9mm, 40, and 45 right now.
Oh, I gotcha.
So you put the cartridge in, but you've got to manually rack the slide every time you pull that trigger.
Got it.
So
Got it.
just to reset the firing
The
pin.
one thing I'm hoping to see, I don't know how soon this would ever be in a civilian market, but where you can interact with, because you brought up voice commands,
Right.
it would be nice to be able to have that technology where you can interact using voice commands, because that's part of the training I give too. It's not just stand there and pull the gun if you're threatened. Now, you have to
You have
use
to
your
assert
command
yourself.
voice
You do
and
have
exactly
to,
that. You have
and
to.
you have to be prepared to do it.
And mind
Exactly.
you, these are only about 2 to 3 seconds, because that's about how long a firefight takes anyway. In that kind of situation.
I remember doing one that was 3 seconds long, and I had no opportunity to make a decision. It was
Well,
it was
let's look at the Texas church shooting. 6 seconds,
right.
and it was done. If people are under the misconception that you have all the time in the world to make these decisions. You don't. You just don't.
Right. You have
And
to,
that's why you've got to train.
exactly.
You know.
Exactly. Training is important.
It's
That's
all well
actually-
and good for people to have a firearm. I'm of the mindset that not everybody should own a firearm to begin with.
Right.
There are a lot of people out there that own firearms that shouldn't.
What do you talking about me?
Hello, you're on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Who is this?
Hello, my name is Robert. I'm really enjoying tonight's show, and actually calling a little bit of reminiscing. I'm 65 years old, and I grew up out in the neighborhood of Wilson Hill Pistol Club. In fact, I still live not far from there. And
Nice.
listening to you guys talk earlier, you know, when I was a kid, that was just 22 caliber. It was just for target
It was.
pistols.
Yeah.
I remember they used to have tournaments out there.
Memorial High School too.
I was just wondering, when do they go up with the caliber size? How is it still just 22 caliber, or is it higher than that?
No, what it is now, Wilson Hill Pistol Club was actually founded by members of a Bullseye League, and at the time they were shooting 22s and they were shooting 38 calibers at the time. Our backstop is sufficient enough to handle the 9mm, 40s, 45s, all the way up to 44 Magnum. So the backstop's good enough to do that, and we let our members shoot the centerfire cartridges.
Oh yeah, because when I was a kid, the president out there was he's now deceased, of course, Stan DeJura. I was just a kid, like I said, but that's really interesting.
Well, they have openings. You can still get
really?
back. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They won't let me join, but they'll let you join.
We are an open club, save for Gary. So anyone is welcome to attend a meeting on the first Wednesday of every month.
It's going on tonight, right?
And it is going on tonight because the first Wednesday of this month was New Year's. So at
Holiday, yeah.
7
Yeah.
p.m., so in about 6 minutes, if you can get out to Wilson Hill Pistol Club at
1732 Lakeshore Road.
1732 Lakeshore Road.
Yeah, or if you can wait 15 minutes, these guys will be here too.
Well, yeah, I know where it is. Like I said, I used to, ride my bike down Lakeshore Road all the time and everything. I'm from the neighborhood, and I live not far away now too.
Yeah, get back into it. It's great. You know?
Well, anyway, once again, I really enjoyed the show. Take care, guys.
Yeah, thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
So,
I'm glad he called because we would have forgot to tell him that.
all right, so we got just a few seconds left.
Yeah, yes.
So, we've got the House bills coming up. We got a place where we can go and find out all the information and get the information, get the materials we need to defend ourselves. We have an instructor that can teach us how to defend ourselves. What happens after we do defend ourselves? We've got legal issues.
Yes, you do. We're fortunate enough to have U.S. Law Shield doing a seminar for New Hampshire gun law at Wilson Hill on Tuesday, the 21st, from 6:30 to 8:30. The seminar will be given by Evan Knappen. He is the program attorney for U.S. Law Shield. The cool thing about this is we talk about New Hampshire gun law, and Evan breaks it down really good so us regular folk can understand what's going on. Representatives from U.S. Law Shield, which I am one, we will talk to you after his seminar and give you an opportunity to become members of U.S. Law Shield. We'll tell you what it's all about and what we do for you. Then after we do our little sales pitch, Evan comes back and answers any and all questions in pertaining to New Hampshire gun law. And he will stay until every question's been answered. So it's a great
pretty
time.
good guy. He's been on the show, but that was
Yeah.
a lot of years ago.
The cost for the Law Shield seminar for members is free. For non-members, it's $10. And you would go to uslawshield.com, click on events, hit the menu to get to the state of New Hampshire, and you will see this event come up. And you can register right online.
All right.
And just one more thing is April 19th, we're having an open house. We're bringing in a bunch of local vendors from all different aspects. I think it'll be a really good time. We'll probably have 30 or so vendors that'll be there to
Sell stuff.
sell stuff, to just come and have a good time.
You having a barbecue too?
We are.
I love the barbecue.
Gary likes the
I love the
barbecues.
barbecue.
Gary who?
All right, gentlemen, we gotta go. We gotta free this place up so the Democrats can take over.
Wildlife Sport Outfitter, Wilson Hill Pistol Club, and contact your local rep and tell them to vote against those red flag laws.
Yep. We'll see you guys next week.